Hello everyone. Welcome to today's sections. My name is Kuo Chen Lee. And today we are going to introduce you Cascading style sheets, which make it easy for you to manage your web pages with style. In today's HTML, text HTML 4.0, for example, most of the displayed abilities of HTML were removed. According to the W3C, those needs are integrated to Cascading style sheets, CSS, to customize all aspects of your web page visuals, from underlying text to positioning items in your pages. That's why we need to learn CSS to manage our website. And here are today's outlines. HTML 4.0 now has two different versions. One is street, and the other one is transitionals. Transitionals HTML 4.0 keeps all display elements and is still more popular than street version. Street versions, in other hands, doesn't have display elements. In these sections, we will see what Cascading style sheets can do for us. As we can see, we can do thousands of things with CSS. But you can't do it straight with HTML. CSS can set up a particular font and point size for your heading. CSS can place text or images at a specific locations in the page without having to use HTML tables. And after you get the working knowledge of HTML, the next step is to master CSS, which is becoming as important as HTML. And we will first talk about the basic information of CSS, why we call it Cascading style sheets. And we will look at how to use CSS. There are three different ways to put your CSS: embedded, external, and inline styles. We will also show you how to write CSS class and what it is for. Then we will talk about some popular CSS styling, including text, color, margins, alignments, etc. To follow along, we will show you the extra powers of CSS that enables you to write dynamic HTML web pages. Last but not the least, we will show you how to position elements using CSS. In Wiki, Cascading style sheets, CSS, is a style sheet language used for describing the presentation's semantics, the looks and formattings of a document written in the markup language. Its most common applications is to style web pages written in HTML and XHTML. But the language can also be applied to any kind of XML document, including plain XML, SVG, and XUL. CSS is designed primarily to enable the separations of document content written in HTML or a similar markup language from document presentations, including elements such as the layout, colors, and fonts. These separations can improve content accessibility, provide more flexibilities and control in the specification of presentation characteristics, enable multiple pages to share formattings, and reduce complexities and repetitions in the structural contents, such as by allowing for table-based web design. CSS can also allow the same markup language pages to be presented in different styles for different rendering methods, such as on-screen, in-print, by voice, when read out by a speech-based browsers or screen render. It can also be used to allow the web page to display differently depending on the screen size or device on which it is being viewed, while the author of a document typically links that document to a CSS file. Readers can use a different style sheet, perhaps one on their own computer, to override the ones the author has specified. And CSS style sheets are collections of style rules. And each rule is targeted at a particular type of elements, such as the body elements, and so on. The actual styles can be given in query process and consist of style property, setting pairs, and you have 3 ways to integrate CSS styles into your web pages: using embedded style sheets, using external style sheets, and using inline styles. For examples, in our examples in the slides at hello.html, we use an embedded style sheet, which means that it has a style elements in the head sections of the documents. We are specifying that the body elements is to have a blue background and a yellow forehead color. Elements are to display their text in italic, and the link elements are to be white before they are clicked, green when the link has already been visited, and blue when you are clicking the link. Note how this works. The styles are collected into style elements and apply the rest of the page, you can see the results as shown in the slide. And you can also store style rulers in an external file, usually given in the extension .css. Here's an example that uses the link HTML elements and the REL attributes to connect to an external style sheet named mystyle.css. Check out mystyle.css. Note that we are setting the background color of the page body elements and setting the font used in the page to Arial. Some things you can't do it with normal HTML. Note that we save this CSS code in a file named mystyle.css in the same directory as the web page that links to it. And you can assign CSS style rulers for elements by using the element's style attributes, the inline style. Inline CSS style rulers take precedence over internal CSS style sheet rules. The internal CSS style sheet takes precedence over any external CSS style sheet rules. And we can use the inline style with style equal after the opening HTML tag. And the entire inline style is coded before closing the first tag. For the HTML elements which have the style attributes are suggested to use them first. Since the precedence is the highest, the higher precedence override lower precedence kind of hierarchy structures. It's why it named Cascading style sheet. And you can define style classes that you can then apply to the elements in your pages. For example, you might have a class named Brood that defines the foreground text colors as Brood. You can also add other styles to the Brood class, such as selecting a font and so on. You define the Brood class as .brood in a style sheet that to indicate it's a general style class. You can also define style classes that can only be used with certain elements. For example, p.smart is a style class named smart that can only be used with p elements. Here's an example that shows how to use style classes. Note that after you have defined a class, you can use it with an HTML elements class attribute. CSS is very powerful. Working with HTML without CSS is okay. But as a business site developer, you probably want more. You want the ability to choose your own font and font size. For example, you want to use the H1 to H6 headers in addition. You want to have different styles for different headings. Ordinary HTML headers are not very flexible because they are preformed and only support a few options. To make them more styles, you have to use CSS. CSS specialized in working with text, using style properties like these: font families, specifies the actual fonts like Arial or Helvetica. If you want to list alternative fonts in case the user's computer is missing your first choice, specifies them as a common separated list, like this: font family, Arial, common, Helvetica. Font style specifies as whether the text is being rendered using a normal, italic, or oblique face. Oblique is standard, but the later shapes are not modified as they are in italic. Used with sans serif typeface. Font variant indicates if the text is to be rendered, use the normal letters for lowercase characters, or using small caps for lowercase characters. Font weight refers to the boldness or lightness of the glyph used to render the text relative to other fonts in the same font families. Font stretch indicates the desired amount of horizontal compressions or expansions in the letters used to draw the text. Similar to Kimming. Line height indicates the height given to each line. A vertical compressions or expansions of the text. Font size refers to the size of the font. And styling colors and backgrounds are popular in the web design. CSS provides various color and background styling to choose from. Here are the style properties you can use to specify colors and backgrounds using CSS styling. For example, we can use color to set the foreground color, background color to set the background color, to use image as your background. We can use background image to set the background image, and background repeat to specify if the background image should be tiled. Also, we can use background attachment to specify if the background scrolls with the rest of the documents. Finally, we can use background positions to set the initial positions of the background. As to the styling margins, indentations, and alignments, CSS also provides various stylings for you to set up the margins and alignments. Here are the CSS properties you use to work with margins, indentations, and alignments. We can use margin left to set the left margins, margin right to set the right margins. With the same idea, margin top sets the top margin of your elements. We use text indent to set the indentations of text, and text align to set alignments of text. Although CSS offers you these ways to indent and align text, this is one area where your results will depend heavily on what browsers you are using. And make sure you check out the results in Internet Explorer, Firefox, and others. Indentations and margins always differ by browsers. If you can't get the professionals looking results you want, it's back to HTML tables for positioning. And changing web pages dynamically is a very powerful technique. For example, say your business is a restaurant. They want to display a different menu, breakfast, lunch, or dinner, depending on the time of the day. You would like your website that check the times when the page first loads and creates a menus in an HTML table to match the time using the dynamic HTML document write method, which lets you write web pages interactively. One of the best aspects of CSS is that it lets your web page come alive in a way that straight, static HTML can't do. You already know that you can use styles to change text when the mouse passes over it. As in this example, we show you the dynamic effect of CSS, where the text grows when the mouse rolls over it. If you want to do more complex on the dynamic effect, such as changing the font size, and color, you can use style classes. In fact, handling mouse rollovers, hyperlinks is also a common thing that a business website would like to do. To do that, there's a special style attribute for hyperlink, hover, which is assigned the style you want to use when the mouse is over the hyperlink. For ultimate in dynamic on the file styles, you can toggle whole style sheet on and off. In other words, you can have two style sheets and select which one is active. You do that by setting the style sheet disabled attribute to true or false to disable or enable the style sheet. And you can use the position style property to set the position of elements in a web page. CSS is frequently used for this purpose in business web pages. Here are the properties you usually use when you work with positioning. You can use position to hold values like absolute or relative, and top to set the offset of the top of the element's display area. Also, you can use button to set the offset of the button of the element's display area. Moreover, you can use the left to set the offset of the left edge of the element's display area, and right to set the offset of the right edge of the element's display area. This is an example that shows how to position elements in absolute terms. The most common ways of using the position style property. You position elements in absolute terms by assigning the position style properties the value absolute, and then actually positioning the elements with the top and left corresponding to the top left of the element style properties. Here's how that looks in the slide, which positions 3 colored div elements. Note that you can position any type of visual HTML element, such as images. If you want to position blocks of text, enclosing that text in div elements is ideal. In these examples, we are also setting the height and width of each div element using the height and width style properties. Besides absolute positionings, you can also use relative positionings. This technique moves elements relative to where they would normally appear in the browser's windows. For example, if you use relative positionings, you can position text out of normal text flows. And this is for today's sections. Thank you.